Tammy and family members, friends, thank you so much for being here to share in this service of remembrance and celebration of life. It is our sacred privilege to meet in loving memory of Margaret, and we bless the ties which bring us to this service. Those ties in love, support, celebration, and appreciation for her life. We all agree it's difficult to meet under such circumstances, but a writer said no matter how long or short a life is, we learn through our relationships. We learn through the high times and the low times. And we always appreciate the times we've had in contact, communication, and care. We can't do justice to Margaret's life in just a few minutes, but we will celebrate together, and I would like to give this brief life summary. We meet to honor and celebrate the life, family life, friendships, work, and interests of Margaret Brannan. We honor her journey of life, which began in Wakefield, Yorkshire, England, February 11, 1929, and concluded here in Tucson, Arizona, May 31, 2018. We honor loved ones who preceded her in death, including husband Billy, father William, mother Frida, and sister Jean. We honor loved ones who survived her, including daughter Tammy and husband Michael, brother Ronald, sister Kathleen, and extended family. We honor Margaret's early years at home in England, including dedicated service to her country, her queen, and the Women's Royal Air Force. We honor her marriage to American serviceman Billy, serving at Royal Air Force Breeze Norton Air Force Base near Oxford. She won him over with her bright smile and cup of tea. They married on 9 January 1954. They welcomed into their home daughter Tammy. She received from them their love of England, Margaret's love of music, books, and the formula to make a proper cuppa. Tammy remembers her mother as a proud, strong-willed woman who was loved by all. We celebrate her career here. Outer Limits Kindergarten, serving as a music and preschool teacher. Circa 1985, she won the prestigious National Child Care Teachers Award and was delighted to collect her award at a ceremony in Washington, D.C. She was an accomplished musician and had the opportunity to direct the Davis-Monthan Air Force Base Church Choir in the 70s and 80s. We celebrate her personal interests and delights. She was a devoted individual who loved to read and travel. She was passionate about taking care of her family and was devoted to her relationship with God. I want to follow those words with these thoughts. As all of you think of her in many special ways, you have a special place in my heart where kindness and comfort, love and peace can be found. Memories of your smile, your words and deeds, and hope in your eyes, and the pride that you shared as you cherished us through the years. These are the treasures we carry within as we think of you with love and bless you with our thoughts and our tears. There's a great expression of honor found in Proverbs 31 that I want to make a part of this eulogy, and it describes the good wife and mother. She does her work with energy. Her arms are strong. She makes sure that what she makes is good. She works by her lamp late into the night. She makes thread with her hands and weaves her own cloth. She welcomes the poor and helps the needy. She watches over her family. She is always busy. Her children bless her. Her husband also praises her. Certainly she fulfilled that calling, to be helpful, to live life with a purpose, and to be dedicated to what she felt was right and true. Such people in our lives, in our homes, are people who give us light, and they make life very rewarding. And so we honor her in those opportunities she had to love, to share, to be a guardian, a counselor, a teacher, and a friend. We honor her role as a mother. Yes, she gave strength to life, foundation to the family, a gentle heartbeat to those around her. She shed tears of joy and concern. She gave joy as a soulmate. She gave inspiration in work, a leader in love and life. You certainly could say, Margaret, you touched my life so deeply in your own expressive way and help me be the best that I can be. And this is just to let you know the difference that you've made and to tell you how much you mean to me. We're going to be blessed by various participants in the service, and first of all, I want to call on Fern Foos as she shares her thoughts and memories.
Margaret and I go back a long way to the 60s when the children and I came back to Tucson to await George's return from his 2 tours in Vietnam. Back then, he had only 30 months between them, and we thought that was a very short time. How things have changed. I don't remember the exact first time we met. One day she and I were comparing notes and learned that we both were attending the chapel at DM. Way back when church services were held in 3 of those old wooden chapels on the base, and there wasn't any room for Sunday school, and we had to have all our Sunday school classes over in the elementary school on the base. We were so excited when the big white chapel was completed, and she and I were both present when the first sermon was preached in it. That friendship deepened after my husband's retirement in 1974 and our return home to Tucson. He came first, while I had to stay behind to complete the sale of our home in Delaware. During that interim period, George attended chapel every Sunday and sang in the choir under Margaret's direction. After the children and I arrived, we tried a couple of local churches, but every time we saw Margaret, she was trying to recruit him back into the chapel. And eventually she succeeded, telling him about the upcoming cantata. She was a good director and enjoyed putting on these cantatas at Christmas and Easter time. She especially liked the ones by John Peterson and the Gaithers. And after the presentations at DM, she often arranged for the choir to go out to the Salvation Army Men's Chapel facility on South 6th Avenue. These events were always well attended, and their appreciation was evident by all the comments during the refreshment period afterward. Choir leader and organist were contract positions and had to be bid for every time the contract ended. Eventually, Margaret was underbid and had to step down. I admired her for the grace with which she did so, becoming a choir member and singing in the alto section for many more years. I remember her excitement when she was named one of the top preschool teachers in America and was invited to the White House in Washington, D.C. to accept her award. And she went too, and she was there. As the years went by, her husband's health continued to decline, except for one brief period. When he felt well enough to come back to chapel, I almost didn't recognize him because he had lost so much weight. In the earlier years, he hadn't been much of a churchgoer, but those years of adversity brought him closer to the Lord. During this all too short period of better health, he and Margaret took a nostalgic trip back to England to visit her family, the places of their courtship and early married life. They had 50 years together until his death in 2004. On the day that Bill was to die, Margaret was home alone and feeling the need to speak to a chaplain. So she called the chaplain's office and asked if someone could come out. Because the only one who was free at that time didn't know her very well, they called George and asked if he would accompany the chaplain. And I chose to go along too, because I thought she needed a woman with her at that time. And she was my friend. Between the time of her request and our arrival, Bill had slipped peacefully into the arms of the Lord. And I stress the word peacefully because that's how he looked lying there on the hospital bed in the family room. He looked so alive that I couldn't resist reaching out and touching him just to make sure that he was really gone. And he was. After the funeral, their daughter Tammy wanted Margaret to leave Tucson and move to Florida to either live near them or with them, her and her husband. But Margaret had other ideas. Tucson was her home, and her friends were here, and this was where she chose to stay. Unfortunately, Alzheimer's crept into her life, so slowly at first that no one outside realized what was happening. She used to be a social person, enjoying visits with her friends and family, outings with her English wives group, and keeping involved in the activities of the chapel. But as time went by, she became more and more forgetful, making reservations or accepting invitations and then not showing up. And once she stopped driving, we used to pick her up on Sunday mornings, on communion Sundays, because that sacrament meant so very much to her. However, after arriving at her home several times and finding that she either wasn't up or had forgotten the day and wasn't dressed, we started reminding her the day before. That worked sometimes. Then we also began phoning before we left home to give her a heads up. If she didn't answer the phone, we assumed that she was sleeping soundly. The last Sunday we went to pick her up, despite there having been no answer to our phone call that morning, no one answered the door. I was worried about her, so I went back to her house the next day and was told that she had fallen. Before that, been taken to St. Mary's by ambulance and was now in rehab at Park Place. I thought that was 4 or 5 years ago, but is that right? Okay. We visited her many times during those years. At first, she knew who we were, but later on, when I could see that she didn't remember my name, I would say, "I'm Fern." And if my husband was with me, she would say, she would look at him and say, "And he's George." Even when she no longer remembered names, her eyes would light up in recognition when someone she knew, even without a name, walked into the room. She was happy to have visitors, and she would thank me over and over again for coming. I always brought her a little treat, usually digestive biscuits, which don't sound very appetizing, but they're English and they're really good. Ever the proper English lady, she would take one, and throughout the visit, she would keep holding them out and offering me one, having forgotten in that short time that she had done so several times before. I always refused, saying that I had brought them for her. When I visited on May the 5th, I was afraid that she had had a stroke. When the aide touched her shoulder and said, "You've got a visitor," she opened her eyes and tried to talk, but we couldn't understand a single word that she was saying. It was all gibberish. I gave her one of the sweets, and she tried to take a bite, but it fell from her fingers. That was when I learned that she hadn't had anything to eat for the past 2 days. After that, I stayed a short while until she fell asleep, and then I went home and called Tammy. Her mother was taken to St. Mary's and diagnosed with a blocked salvial glands on the left side of her face. Though that side of her neck was swollen, she didn't seem to be in any pain when they examined her. There appeared to be no dire emergency at first, but after a short while, things worsened, and Tammy began making plans to return. Fortunately, Margaret had given her a durable power of attorney, in which she spelled out her wishes concerning end-of-life care. She didn't want her life prolonged artificially if the prognosis was poor. One of the doctors wanted to do an invasive surgery that might do no good and leave her with a misshapen face and other problems if she survived. Respecting her mother's wishes, Tammy said no. Margaret was then returned to Park Place as a hospice patient. This time she was given a private room with 2 beds in it. And after Tammy's arrival, she was offered the use of the other bed and was able to stay in the same room with her mother 24/7 until the end. During that time, many people either came by or phoned and were able to say their goodbyes. Sometimes Margaret was more responsive than others. It is said that hearing is the last to go, and so we like to believe that she heard all those last words of love from friends and loved ones. Some nights, Margaret was restless, and her cries of pain would waken Tammy, who would then have to go down to the nurse's station to get someone to come and administer pain medication. Not so on Margaret's last night. Tammy went to sleep at around 10:30 p.m. and woke up at 3:30 a.m. to find her mother finally at peace, having died quietly in her sleep. What a blessing. Who would have imagined that Margaret had enough stamina left at age 89 and in her poor condition to survive 24 days without food and 12 days without water. This period undoubtedly was very hard on Tammy. But as someone who wasn't able to be there when either of my parents died, I think how fortunate it was that both Tammy and Margaret were able to share this time together. Throughout this stressful time, this loving daughter always kept her mother's wishes in the forefront and tried to make the best decisions possible using those guidelines. I admired Margaret and I admire her daughter, who she raised to be such a beautiful person. And Tammy asked me to read this anonymous bit that I'm sure some of you have heard before. I am standing upon the seashore. A ship is at my side and spreads her white sails to the morning breeze and starts for the blue ocean. I stand and watch her until at last she hangs like a speck of white cloud just where the sea and sky come to mingle with each other. Then someone at my side says, "There, she is gone." Gone where? Gone from my sight, that is all. She is just as large in mast and hull and spar as she was when she left my side. And she is just as able to bear her load of living freight to her destined port. Her diminished size is in me, not in her. And just at the moment when someone at my side says, "There, she is gone," there are other eyes watching her coming and other voices ready to take up the glad shout, "Here she comes!" And that is dying.
It's interesting. I've been listening to that all morning long as she went over. And what I heard this time was a little bit similar. But the words are so beautiful. I enjoy Margaret. I remember her when she was the choir director. And one of the things I remember best, she would always criticize us about the way we pronounced our words. They were too American. They weren't English words. The hymn I'm going to sing for you now goes right along with what the point was. Probably quite familiar to many of you. Beyond the Sunset. Beyond the sunset, oh blissful morning, when with our Savior heaven is begun, and her toiling ended, oh glorious dawn. Beyond the sunset, when day is done. Beyond the sunset, no cloud will gather, no storms will threaten, no fears annoy. O day of gladness, O day unending, beyond the sunset, eternal joy. Beyond the sunset, oh glad reunion with our dear loved ones who have gone before. In that their homeland will know no parting. Beyond the sunset, forevermore.
The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. And Margaret and I learned that. We met years ago in Bob's Big Boy. Do you remember that place? We were eating hamburgers and I heard this lovely voice and tone that was from over there. I thought I have to find them out. So I went over and we bonded forever. And now she's with her Lord. Thank God. Amen. I knew her. She was my blessing. And she, as the other friend said, you know, the same story. She was always there for you. We had fun, we had laughs. She was a wonderful cook, and I love English cooking. So we did all of that too. And now she's with her Lord, with His never-ending mercy, His never-ending love. That's what I remember that keeps me by the day when I'm feeling sad. Amen.
Thank you so much. And our next speaker is Ray White.
Good afternoon. My name is Ray Wagner, and I've been asked to say a few words about Margaret Brannon, or as I know her best, Mrs. B. I grew up on the same street as the Brannon family, East Kiora, here in Tucson. As all neighborhood kids do, they eventually cross paths. They eventually cross paths with other kids and families in the neighborhood. And for those lucky enough, they develop nurturing and maintain lifelong friendships over time. I was one of those lucky kids with Mr. and Mrs. Brannon and their family. The Brannon home was one of several in the neighborhood where us kids would gather. What stands out for me personally was when I would stop by and Mrs. B would always offer me a cup of tea. It made me feel like such a grown-up, sitting there trying to look cool, serving a cup of tea, as if I did this all the time. I also remember that I was always trying not to break her fine china or spill anything in the process. It reminds me of a BBC program called Keeping Up Appearances, where the lady of the house, Hyacinth Bouquet, she would always be inviting her neighbor over for a cup of tea, and the neighbor is always petrified of breaking the royal dolphin china with periwinkles or whatever it's called. That was me back then. Remind you, I was only a kid. Mrs. B made me feel like a grown-up. We would talk about world events, neighborhood gossip, or even the latest Wedgwood purchase that Mrs. B had just made on her latest England visit. I always felt genuinely welcomed when I visited her. Mrs. B treated me with utmost respect and always gave me her undivided attention. These simple gestures had a lasting effect on me that continues to this day. as I interact and relate to others. Mrs. B and I have maintained our friendship through the years, and I'm truly blessed to have known her. So until we meet again, Mrs. B, keep calm and carry on. And do mind the gap as you make the crossover. Cheers.
I use my cheers. What I'm going to sing for you now is one of Margaret's favorites. Everybody is probably familiar with it, and I enjoy singing it. The words are beautiful, and it's got 4 verses, and I've always been asked about dropping the verse out. There's no verse that you can take out of this song. They all fit. So you're going to hear all 4 verses. Oh Lord my God, when I in awesome wonder consider all the worlds thy hands have made, I see the stars, I hear the rolling thunder, thy power throughout the universe displayed. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. When through the woods and forest glades I wander, and hear the birds sing sweetly in the trees, when I look down from lofty mountain grandeur, and hear the brook, and feel the gentle breeze, then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. And when I think that God, his Son not sparing, sent him to die, I scarce can take it in, that on the cross, my burden gladly bearing, he bled and died to take away my sin. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. When Christ shall come with shout of acclamation and take me home, what joy shall fill my heart. Then I shall bow in humble adoration and there proclaim, my God, how great thou art. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art.
Ray and George, thank you for your inspiration. I would like to conclude with thoughts of Margaret's love and the spiritual love that she experienced in life. From St. Paul in 1 Corinthians 13, love is patient, kind, It does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud, it is not rude, it is not self-seeking, it is not easily angered, it keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails. Now these three remain: faith, hope, and love. The greatest of these is love. As you think of Margaret and the love she shared with you, you know that love, as the writer said, is smiling. It's helping. It's welcoming. It's encouraging. It is comforting. It is visiting others, running an errand. Love is forgiving. Love is sharing God's love. And as we think of her eternal reward, we can say with the psalmist, "The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the strength of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? One thing have I desired of the Lord, that will I seek after, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to behold the beauty of the Lord and to inquire in his temple." And for your journey of life, remember, God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. We can say now, a beautiful life, physically, has come to an end. She died as she lived, everyone's friend. In our hearts, a memory will always be kept of one we loved and will never forget. I want to conclude with a blessing, but I want to form the blessing in these terms as we think of her life filled with blessings. From Wakefield to Bryce Norton to Tucson, and sharing with you in many blessed ways. And now the great blessing in Numbers chapter 6 of the Old Testament. "And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to Aaron and his sons, saying, This is the way you shall bless the children of Israel. Say to them, The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace." Amen. Tamian would like for you to share after the service is closed, if you would like to select a flower from these arrangements as a remembrance of this time of celebration. I might add this. You know, as you look at those floral tributes, they speak of the beauty in Margaret's life, the fragrance, and the variety. And you know, as you look at a floral arrangement like that and a variety of flowers, we know this much. One flower doesn't compete with the next, it just blooms. And so this isn't our calling to compete, but it's to lend beauty and fragrance and variety, delight. So thank you so much for being here to share and give your support in all these loving ways. And so this concludes our service, and so it's been nice to think of someone who's been so important, so special in the life, in the home, and in the circle of friends. And our staff will be assisting us as we conclude, but thanks again for sharing in this great time.